Hello Chess 2! In this video we are going to continue with the Checkmate pattern series, and here we're going to talk about two mate patterns, the Opera mate and Mayet's mate. Two similar mate patterns. They both, in both patterns, the rook is the chaser and the bishop is the helper. In one of them, the bishop is just the helper, in the other mate pattern, the bishop is the helper and the guard. In this position here, we're looking at the Opera mate, where the rook is the chaser and the bishop is going to be the helper and the guard. Do you see the checkmate in 1 for white? White to move checkmate in 1. If you need to pause the video to find the mate, go ahead and do it. Okay. There it is. You notice that the rook is the chaser. The bishop is the guard. It's guarding the e7 escape square, but it's also the helper. It's protecting the rook. And white does have one opponent helper. This black pawn right here does take away an escape square from the black king. So this is called the Opera mate. And the Opera mate, by the way, it's named after Paul Morphy, who played a game in Paris, France, while watching the opera. And he was playing against two people, the Duke of Brunswick and the Count Iseord. And this was during a live opera performance. And here we have the actual endgame position from that famous game in Paris by Paul Morphy. So this was towards the end of the game. If you want to see the whole game, Google the opera game with Paul Morphy opera game, and you'll find it's a very famous game in chess. And here we have the end position of this game that took place in Paris in 1858. Paul Morphy is white, and the two opponents were black here. And yesterday we had a student, shout out to Miles, who found the first move, which was beautiful. And here we are trying to create an opera mate. So you know the opera mate, we're going to have the rook is going to be a chaser, and the bishop's going to be the helper and the guard. So what do we need to do to clear this D file to get an opera mate? Because right now we have a knight here, so white can't do an opera mate. And this is what Miles found. He found this beautiful queen sacrifice idea, which forces this black knight to capture, because the black king can't move anywhere because of this bishop takes away e7. So the knight has to capture. And what that queen sacrifice does is it opens the D file for white to get an opera mate. Do you see the opera mate right now? Yes, right here. Rook is the chaser. Bishop is the helper and the guard. It guards the e7 escape square. That is a checkmate. And that is an opera mate. Let's look at one more opera mate example. Okay, white to move with a potential opera mate. Now, it depends on how black responds. If black responds one way, it'll be an opera mate. If it responds a different way, it'll be a different mate. But it's a forced mate in 2 moves, or actually 3 moves, 2 or 3 moves depending on how black responds to the initial move by white. Okay, so white to move. If you would like to analyze it, try to find the solution, go ahead and pause the video now. Okay, if you found rook takes the bishop on g6, that is the correct first move. And black has 2 choices. It can block the rook by playing its own rook to g7, or it can capture the rook. And if it captures the rook, do you see the opera mate in 1 move? There's an opera mate where the rook is the chaser and the bishop is the helper and the guard. Here it is. Rook h8. That is a checkmate. The bishop is the guard. It guards that escape square, and it's the helper. It protects the chaser. White does have one opponent helper. This rook here is taking away an escape square away from the black king. Okay, and let's go back. If black decides not to capture the rook, and the only other move is to play there, but that just leads to a forced checkmate in 2. The white rook can capture, because the king cannot capture the rook because it's protected by the bishop. And the king moves over here, only move, and then we have a mate in 1. Do you see the checkmate in 1? Yeah, this rook right here. and that is also a checkmate. Okay, so those were 3 examples of, well, this is not an opera mate, but this is an opera mate. Pawn takes, and that is an opera mate. Okay, so we're going to move on to one other mate pattern, which is called Mayet's mate. Mayet's mate is similar to the opera mate, but the main difference is the bishop is not a guard. It's only the helper. And in Mayet's mate, white here also needs help from black's both these pieces. The 2 pawns are also going to help take away escape squares from the black king. Okay, it's white to move checkmate in 1. Do you see the Mayet's mate? Rook is chaser. The bishop is the helper. Yep, right here. That is a checkmate. Bishop is the helper, protects the chaser. These 2 pawns also play a role in taking away escape squares from the black king. That is a checkmate, and that checkmate is called Mayet's mate. We're going to look at one other Mayet's mate here. It's a little harder, Mayet's mate, but it is a forced checkmate in 2 moves via the Mayet's mate. If you would like to pause the video to try to find the checkmate in 2, using the Mayet's mate pattern, go ahead and pause the video. Okay, so it's similar to that opera mate, the one where there was the queen sacrifice. In this position too, we need to sacrifice the queen, because why? We need to open up a file for the rook and the bishop to coordinate together to get a Mayet's mate. Black here only has 1 move. Black king cannot move anywhere. The only move here is the bishop has to take the queen. And now, do you see the Mayet's mate? Where we have this rook and this bishop, they're going to coordinate together to get Mayet's mate. Do you see the checkmate in 1? Yep, it's this rook right there. The bishop is the helper, the rook is the chaser, and the king's in check. The king can't get out of check. That is a checkmate. Someone in class yesterday thought that it was rook takes the bishop, but that's not a checkmate, because black has 1 resource here. This queen can capture the rook. So the Mayet's mate is getting the bishop off of this d file. That is the idea behind this Mayet's mate, to where this rook on the e1 and the c6 bishop coordinate together to get a Mayet's checkmate. Okay, those are 2 more mate patterns you have learned, and we'll see you next time. All right, bye-bye.